Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on my channel. Today we are going to learn some practical lessons of how to do business in China. The history of China spans several millennia across a wide geographical area. Each region, now considered part of the Chinese world, has experienced periods of unity, fracture, prosperity, and hardship. China has an upper-middle income, developing mixed socialist market economy, incorporating industrial policies and strategic five-year plans. It is the world's second-largest economy by nominal GDP, behind the United States, and the world's largest economy since 2016, when measured by purchasing power parity. China accounted for 19% of the global economy in 2022. Historically, China was one of the world's foremost economic powers for most of the two millennia from the 1st until the 19th century. The speed at which China went from communism to embracing capitalism should be no surprise. This is a country where the traditional greeting for Chinese New Year, the equivalent of saying Merry Christmas, is congratulations on getting rich. Similarly, a central part of funerals in China is the burning of fake paper money to send assets for the departed in the afterlife. In southern China, papier-mâché mansions, luxury cars, and entertainment centers are burned to provide extra comforts. At weddings, guests line up at a table outside the reception hall, where the red gift envelopes of cash are ripped open, counted, and recorded as everybody in line watches. Given the distrust of the political system resulting from the Cultural Revolution and the corruption and constant change of the reform era, many Chinese place their complete trust only in money. This was most bluntly put to me by a cynical and scruffy 29-year-old cigarette smuggler surnamed Yan, whom I met one day while wandering the streets of the city of Wuhan between meetings. A week earlier, two policemen had been shot when they tried to extort money from a street vendor. When I told Yan that I was American, he told me of the shooting as if it were a positive event. "America is great because guns make everybody equal," he said. "Freedom in China is a pocketful of money," he added, showing me a 6-inch thick wad of 50 yuan notes. "In China, you either have money or you have to be obedient." For most Chinese officials, life is guided by the proverb of Zhi Lu Wei Ma, which means point at a deer and call it a horse. Saying one thing and doing another is a way of life, because the party believes that to do anything else would risk destabilizing the system. The Chinese government is obsessed with social order. Firm control from the top has always been considered the only path to peace and prosperity in China. One reason is that China is a shame-based society very different from the guilt-based West. In the West, with society's religious orientation, many controls are internalized. Guilt, which is ultimately the fear of sin and eternal damnation, puts a check on bad behavior. In China, it is the fear of exposure and the accompanying shame. As a result, the Chinese can feel pretty good about doing almost anything as long as they don't get caught. In that atmosphere, the only efficient form of law and order is a strong and omnipresent government that increases the likelihood of getting caught if you do something wrong. Global trade, foreign investment, and the commercialization of China's economy have brought in an extensive body of laws and constantly improving legal system. But the core philosophy is rule by law, not the rule of law. The blindfolded goddess of justice isn't part of Chinese culture. In China, the law is a set of handcuffs to rule society in the interests of the rulers. Justice in China is ultimately a political decision. It isn't surprising that throughout China's history, people have chosen to settle disputes themselves instead of seeking government intervention. In imperial times, justice was dispensed by local mandarins who lived in fortified compounds and had little contact with the general public. Their brand of justice discouraged people from seeking government arbitration. If one was involved in a dispute or accused of a crime, you were never considered completely innocent. the assumption was that you must have done something wrong just to be in that position. Even today, Chinese people instinctively try to settle things among themselves. It's a usual thing when foreign businessmen spend much of their time walling and ducking, a term for the inevitable excursions to the Great Wall and the seemingly endless Beijing duck banquets that gave English-speaking Chinese a chance to pump the foreigners for information about their businesses and sniff out divisions among the foreign negotiators. The foreign companies wanted to establish factories in China, but China wanted investment that would then be turned toward export production to earn foreign exchange for China and provide jobs for Chinese. The special economic zones would serve as study centers for Chinese companies to learn from the foreigners so that they could supply China's industrial needs and create the country's own brands and consumer products. The negotiating environment, whether government or business, is all about China's perception of itself and foreigners. They want you to show deference, to recognize them as important and powerful players on the world scene, but they won't hesitate to try to make you feel guilty for the past 200 years if it can give them an advantage in negotiations. While proud of their ancient culture, the Chinese will pander their poverty. They love to convince you that you owe them something. They are poor, you are rich, and their poverty is your fault. They want you to help remedy this inequity with a gift, usually knowledge. The larger and more successful your company, the more they want to be given. The Chinese are adept and subtle readers of foreign attitudes. The issue of basic respect is extremely important. It is okay to be tough and steadfast, but disastrous to be insulting. Humor can lighten up stressful times in negotiations. The Chinese have a very good sense of humor, especially if you are poking fun at yourself, not them. But notions of equality, mutual benefit, and respect are one-sided in China. You are expected to be very sensitive to Chinese feelings, but don't expect the same in return. You are, after all, a barbarian on their turf. Chinese negotiators are masters at pushing the impression that you need them far more than they need you. It's all about gaining the psychological upper hand. Many foreign business people who negotiate in China bring along too much goodwill and trust. If you don't give them what they want, the Chinese will quickly label you unfriendly to China. Your goal is to be friendly, but not foolish. Don't be afraid to tell your Chinese counterparts that this is business, not friendship, but that you can do friendly business if both sides get a fair deal. Many of your Chinese partners will try to avoid the responsibility, especially the government officials. They try to avoid making decisions for which they can later be held accountable. Thus, they like to diffuse decisions, making through many layers so that no one person can be blamed. In negotiations, this Chinese preoccupation with face can be crippling for them. Foreigners who are not fixated with face have a tremendous advantage. If the talks meet an impasse caused by the Chinese side, it is easy for the foreigner to accept blame and move discussions ahead. You also lose nothing by treating even the most obnoxious Chinese negotiator with exaggerated respect. Treat them with the inflated importance they expect, but look out for your own bottom line. There is a universal fear by government officials that something they do could be criticized for not upholding the country's interests. Government officials can lie to you, but you must never lie to them. Exclude information, but don't provide false information. The same is about Chinese police. Never try to confront the cops. They have immense power, and you will always lose. Instead, go around them and find ways to disarm their arguments. Pay a dumb foreigner when it's necessary. As a businessman in China, you need to understand politics, but you cannot participate in politics. If you don't understand politics in China, then you can't do well in business. If the government doesn't support you, you can hardly move one step. Your company has to help solve the country's problems, or the problems of some official man. That's why you should always remember that contracts in China matter less than personal relationships with Chinese businessmen or officials. And also, the HR position in China is very important and far more stronger than in any other country. The Chinese appear to the West to be a collective society, but in fact, they are among the world's most individualistic and selfish people. That is why China's rush to get rich is accompanied by deep distrust of the system and anyone outside one's immediate family or circle of close friends. This has created a business environment that is steeped in dishonesty and in dire need of transparency and fair dispute resolution systems. The way to become a truly successful businessman in China is to be tough and confident, but not insulting. Chinese respond well to charismatic and visionary leaders who will take care of them and who can tell them what to do to be successful. James McGregor is a journalist turned businessman who has lived in Beijing for 15 years. He is currently a China business investor, advisor, and entrepreneur, and also serves as senior China advisor for Ogilvy Public Relations Worldwide. He is also a founding partner of Black Ink China and was a pioneer of the Chinese internet.